So there's a guy holding one of these. That's what this video was claiming. There's a guy holding one of these. And you see the bullet come out. So that's what that was. You saw the bullet come out. And they're saying this is the guy right here. So he gives the hand signal. This guy comes out from behind. Watch this. So there's the guy. So they're saying that guy took the shot, and then he immediately walks backwards. Watch this.
And he walks away like nothing fucking
So there
happens.
he is. These two guys working together. He just walks away like nothing. He wasn't like freaked out. He walks away like he just did something. Again, I'm not saying this is how it happened. I'm saying this is compelling and that people should look into all these theories. So there's the shot, and here's the guy. Does the guy look weird? Does he look freaked out? Does he look weirded out? Does he look like he just witnessed an assassination? No, he looks like he's calmly walking backwards.
And then he joins the group.
Or moved through the hands of responders could contain mixed profiles or trace amounts of DNA that do not necessarily prove handling of the weapon at the moment of firing. That is why prosecutors need to contextualize DNA findings with time/location data, items' proximity to the weapon, and other corroborating physical evidence like gunshot residue or fingerprints on barrel surfaces. The public, meanwhile, should beware of simplistic equations. DNA equals firing. It can, but only with the documented chain and the integrated forensic narrative that links the transfer to the operative act rather than to prior contact. Reports of a partially burned note found at Robinson's residence that allegedly references a planned act and a target have added another combustible element. If the note exists and was properly recovered and preserved, it could be central to showing premeditation. But absent public release, or even a verified, redacted summary, such reports feed speculation about what the note contains, who saw it, and whether it was genuinely linked to planning or was coincidental, taken out of context, or even fabricated. Forensic examination of such a paper would include ink analysis, handwriting comparisons, burn pattern study, and substrate testing to date exposure or burning. Investigators would need to show how the note's chain of custody was documented from discovery to lab submission. Moreover, textual items are always subject to interpretive slippage. A line that reads like a plan to one reader may be rhetorical hyperbole to another. Courts require that such statements be tested in the adversarial process, where authenticity and relevance are assessed under cross-examination and with corroborative context. Until the item is produced in discovery under protective order, public statements about its content will remain circumstantial and necessarily contested. Digital evidence. The so-called Discord messages that are reported to have been tied to Robinson's phone are equally powerful and equally fraught. Texts, chat logs, and voice messages reveal contemporaneous intent in ways few other items can, but they are also easily manipulated and require guarded handling. For mobile logs to be credible, investigators must produce server-side records, device backups, and device forensic extractions that show the messages in situ with timestamps and sender/recipient metadata. Screenshots shared online are unreliable because they can be fabricated. Server-side exports or forensic device images are the gold standard. Moreover, messages need context. Who are the interlocutors, what history exists between them, and do the messages represent serious threats, boastful talk, or idle speculation? The legal admissibility of such messages will depend on authentication, not just that the messages exist, but that they were sent from the accused account at the stated time and without later tampering. Until transcripts are produced in discovery and reviewed by independent examiners, claims about the content of the messages remain allegations that the defense has the right to contest vigorously. Surveillance logs, timestamps, and camera syncing errors create a fog that the prosecution and defense must penetrate. Multiple camera systems often run on different clocks. Even minute discrepancies can create contradictory timelines when footage is synchronized manually. Investigators should, as a matter of procedure, include time synchronization logs showing when each camera's clock was set and how it was referenced to a master time source. Failure to do so creates room for honest disagreement about movement sequences and the plausibility of an accused presence at certain times. When the public hears that cameras glitched or that timestamps don't line up, the assumption can swing between technical flakiness and foul play. To resolve this, forensic video analysts assign confidence intervals to each time reference, cross-check with server logs, and document any corrections applied to the footage. If mismatches persist in material ways, for example, one camera ostensibly places a suspect in location A at 6:32 while another places him at location B at 6:34 with impossible transit times, the prosecution's narrative weakens and the defense's argument about reasonable doubt strengthens. Defense attorneys have focused on incomplete disclosure of lab results, footage, and chain of custody records precisely because those are the fulcrums on which the case will turn. In most modern criminal trials, culprits are convicted not by a single item but by the alignment of independent strands: video, DNA, ballistics, communications, and physical presence. Break one strand, say, the chain of custody for a weapon, and the prosecutorial case can slip. Defense teams will demand raw footage, original files, logbooks, lab notebooks, and witness interview notes because those items either corroborate the state's theory or expose gaps and inconsistencies. Discovery delays are normal to a degree, especially where enormous volumes of digital evidence exist, but the defense's right to timely access is fundamental. Judicial oversight of the discovery timeline and potential appointment of a neutral third-party reviewer can reassure the public that evidence handling is being taken seriously and that exculpatory material, if it exists, will not be suppressed. Online claims that a second unidentified man stood directly behind Charlie Kirk, a detail some users insist they see in peripheral clips, has been publicly provocative. Such assertions often appear in the early chaos of an event when multiple low-quality clips are circulated, sometimes frame-stacked and sometimes re-encoded to enhance suggested details. The appropriate response from investigators is to say, "We will collect every clip, preserve originals, and compare angles to see if a second person is consistently present across independent sources. If that person exists on multiple unedited cameras with consistent metadata, the claim must be investigated. If the second man appears only in heavily processed or isolated clips, the claim is weaker. The danger of online amplification is that it invites vigilantism and misidentification. The public must therefore press for methodical testing rather than act as triers of fact based on heavily compressed social media frames. Ultimately, public access to full footage, raw ballistics data, and entry logs is the only way to either confirm the single-shooter hypothesis or to challenge it decisively. Full access does not mean broadcasting sensitive material without guardrails. It means court-supervised discovery, protective orders where necessary, and independent experts appointed to review materials when conflicts about authenticity or completeness arise. A transparent, auditable process would allow forensic teams to demonstrate why the evidence supports a specific conclusion or why alternative explanations remain plausible. Until such review happens, the case will remain unresolved in the public mind. Compelling allegations and troubling gaps will coexist, leaving citizens torn between suspicion and the need for due process. In short, every claim here is actionable only if it is tested under careful forensic protocols. Transparency is the antidote to rumor. Preserve originals, publish procedural timelines, allow independent audits, and let the adversarial system do its work under the watchful eye of judges who can order disclosures and appoint neutral experts where needed. A single video frame, a quick gesture, and 1,000 theories now circle a death that should be settled by evidence, not speculation. If you want first-hand updates on this developing story and others, hit subscribe and turn on the bell now. A short clip that surfaced online has become one of the most contentious items in the investigation. It appears to show a man making a brief hand signal seconds before the fatal shot. That motion is small in isolation. A raised hand, a pointing finger, a subtle index tilt, but in a high-stakes case it carries outsized meaning. When people watch a frame-by-frame slowdown and see a person making what could be read as a cue, The imagination supplies motive and coordination. Online detectives see a signal to fire, political actors read orchestration, and the rest of the public wonders whether there were discrete, coordinated actions behind the single violent act. The first thing to remember is that gestures are ambiguous. A peace sign can look like a count, a wave can be misread as a directional cue, and in a crowded, charged environment people signal to each other constantly for trivial reasons. The second thing to remember is that video on social platforms is often compressed, sped up, or clipped in ways that make motion look sharper or more intentional than it truly was. Forensic videographers stress the need to examine original, uncompressed footage with intact timestamps and full frames before inferring intent from a single frame. That original file can reveal context, the person's posture in preceding and following seconds, who else was nearby, whether the hand held any object, and whether lighting or shadow changed perception. In addition to technical authentication, the gesture's meaning should be tested against other evidence. Were there communications in the minutes before the event that used similar signals? Did witnesses report seeing a coordinated movement? Do other video angles show the same motion from a clearer vantage? Without those corroborating elements, a single clip is a suggestive lead, not proof of orchestration. Even if the hand signal were authentic and meaningful, interpreting it requires provenance. Who posted the clip, when, and from what source? Crowdsourced investigation often surfaces items quickly, but the original uploader may have cropped, re-encoded, or mis-timestamped the file. In forensic practice, teams try to obtain the camera's original export and compare hashes to prove the social media copy is identical to the original. They then analyze time-based metadata, camera synchronization, and frame rates. They look for edited joins, inter-frame compression artifacts, and other signs of manipulation. Only after that work can an investigative team say with confidence that a specific motion occurred at a precise time. Even then, lawyers will argue about meaning. Is a hand signal legally culpable or merely suspicious? Prosecutors might argue that the movement fits a theory of coordinated attack when combined with other evidence. Defense attorneys will point to ambiguity and the possibility of misidentification. The public should therefore treat such a clip as a potentially important lead that must be tested, not as a smoking gun moment that settles the case. Finally, the social consequences of interpreting a gesture are enormous. Once a clip goes viral and is framed as a signal, the narrative can harden. Journalists may repeat the claim without noting the careful forensic steps that remain. Commentators will build political frames around the supposed coordination, and ordinary viewers will choose sides on the basis of what looks to be intuitive evidence. That dynamic can pre-shape jurors, taint witness recollections, and impede impartial inquiry. Investigators aware of these risks often delay public comment until they confirm the clip's authenticity and explain its context. That restraint can frustrate families and the public, who want quick answers, but it's essential to avoid allowing a suggestive frame to become the dominant story before it's been properly verified. Now consider the soundscape. Witnesses' descriptions of where shots came from differ in ways that matter. Some people who were close to the stage described the origin of the noise as coming from near ground level, a nearby entrance, a lowered area to the left of the crowd, or a position behind the main audience. Others, including people seated further back, reported perceiving the shots as originating from behind or above the stage. Human auditory perception in chaotic, reverberant environments is notoriously unreliable. A single gunshot can create multiple reflections off buildings, glass, and hard surfaces. Echoes can arrive milliseconds later and be interpreted by the brain as separate sources. Acoustic experts often have to reconstruct soundscapes using synchronized audio from multiple devices, attendees' phones, venue microphones, and security cameras, to triangulate the most likely origin point. When eyewitness statements conflict, it is not necessarily because one person lies and the other tells the truth. It may be that both are reporting sincerely but under the distortions of stress and echo. That said, if several distinct accounts reliably cluster around different directions, for example, a cluster near a rooftop and a cluster at ground level, investigators must take that divergence seriously and test for multiple firing events or multiple shooters. Acoustic forensics can distinguish gunshot signatures from echoes by analyzing waveform shapes, arrival times, and frequency content. Sophisticated modeling, used in concert with ballistic testing and camera ping analysis, can often determine whether there was a single discharge or multiple discharges at different locations. But that modeling requires raw audio files with known sampling rates and synchronized timestamps, files that must be preserved intact and shared with independent analysts under appropriate legal protections. When such comprehensive acoustic work is done, it can either confirm a single-source hypothesis or compel investigators to widen their search for other firing points. The public's immediate intuition based on where they remember hearing the shots is a start. The decisive step is rigorous audiovisual forensics aligned with physical scene evidence. Prosecutors have made explicit claims tying Tyler Robinson to the rooftop rifle, asserting a DNA link involving a wrapped towel and other forensic markers. DNA evidence can be powerfully incriminating, but its weight depends entirely on context, documentation, and handling. A DNA profile that matches a suspect and is recovered from material in proximity to a crime scene will naturally draw prosecutorial emphasis, but defense counsel will immediately probe chain of custody. Who retrieved the towel? Where was it found? How was it packaged, logged, and stored? Were gloves used? Were photos taken before the item was moved? Was there a documented inventory and an unbroken trail of possession? For DNA to pass muster in court, labs must follow stringent accreditation protocols. Extraction and amplification procedures must be recorded, contamination controls documented, and analysts' notes preserved. Even then, DNA transfer dynamics can complicate interpretation. Secondary transfer, where DNA is moved from one person to an object via an intermediary, is a recognized phenomenon. A towel that had been handled in a domestic setting, placed near multiple people. The community deserves both clarity and caution. Clarity in the published findings and caution in rushing to judgment on the basis of compressed clips or sensational speculation. This investigation stands at a crossroads between sound forensic practice and the siren songs of rapid public narrative. If authorities and courts follow rigorous procedures, documenting chains of custody, authenticating digital files, synchronizing timestamps, and granting defense access under court supervision, then evidence will clear the fog or expose it. If not, the story will remain a contested mosaic of clips, claims, and suspicions. Demand the records, insist on independent review, and measure conclusions against documented process rather than viral conviction. Only then will the public be able to move from anxious rumor to verified truth.